The Super Rugby Trans-Tasman competition. Will we see an improvement by Australia this week, and can they get a win?
Go on, rugby man. Kick us off.
Of course they can. This is rugby. Of course they can. I think they can. It will only be one team. And I think there's been signs from last week that this team that I'm going to particularly not vouch for because they're going up against my team. I think they can do it. I think they can actually do it. I think they've got the ability to be able to adapt after that first round. But yeah, certainly I don't. Yeah, I think they can definitely come back and one team at least win.
That's sacrilege, mate. You can't say that you're looking forward to seeing Australia win a game against all those New Zealand teams. I'm saying they won't improve and they won't get a win. And at the end of round 2 of Super Rugby Trans-Tasman, it'll be New Zealand sides 10, Australia 0.
Oh dear. Big call, but okay.
It's a call that needs to be made.
I don't want to pick a side too soon. All right.
yeah. Don't give yourself up just yet. Let us have a bit of an argument first.
Hey, are you siding that way already?
No. We'll find out later.
Okay.
That she is. Go on, mate. Kick us off.
You go, mate. You've already got her buddy on your side, mate. You kick us off.
Yeah, so therefore I don't really need to work too hard. So I think you're the one who does.
All right. No, I actually do think. Round one was, a little bit, lopsided. Well, it was 0-5 to the Australians, but I think the Brumbies, I think the history that they've shown. The last time they went and played, the last time they came and played in Hamilton, they actually won, and that started off that sort of 11 sort of game streak that the Chiefs had. I think they got the ability to be able to do it. I think they had 2 really hard losses. So obviously the one in the final where they had, they lasted the dying moments against, a rampant Red side, albeit, with 12 men by the end of it. And then the following weekend against the Crusaders side, I think this style of play is similar to the way the Kiwis sort of play. And you've seen that in one of their tries that they scored against the Crusaders, where they came out of their own sort of half in the 22, broke down that sideline and then ended up scoring. So then, realistically, you'd have to say not much time left on the clock. But then they came back and did it again. So I honestly think, in terms of a team that can do it, I think the Brumbies can. When you look at the other sides, there is a possibility that the Reds can do it against at home, and I know home advantage is massive, and also. I was going to say Perth because of the travel factor with the Highlanders, but I think.
So now you're giving them 3 wins.
No, I'm not giving them 3. I think possibilities, but I think if you're going to put your money on anything, I think the Brumbies, having been in New Zealand first round, lost in a close match, and then go to Hamilton, I think they can actually can do it. If I look at the bigger scheme of things, in terms of where we're at, who was better off and more beneficial out of this whole competition? Is it the New Zealand teams, or is it the Australian teams? I think it's the Aussies.
Definitely.
And so when you look at the bigger picture in terms of how they will adapt, they've already started sort of playing some great rugby, albeit in their own competition. So I think in terms of we got five or so weeks, only 4 left this week. Really, if there's going to be a team from Australia that progresses through the final, they've got to win. They've got to win this because otherwise they're gone skis. But if you go on later on, I think a team will pick up a win. And when you look at where we're at, the New Zealand teams, they adapt, but the Australian teams, I think, they're more beneficial out of the whole competition in itself. And you'll see a different dynamics next year. And when you look at it, really, when it comes to the World Cup in a couple of years' time, I think the Aussies are slowly building towards that. So yes, at the moment, not so great first round, but really it's a new thing. And I would have thought that having a week off, particularly around the finals, would have made a big difference. But it's a new thing for both sides of the Tasman. Bigger scheme of things, the Aussies, I think it's going to be more beneficial for them. And you only seen what happened to the Jaguares when they came in first up and tried to adapt to our rugby. These guys will do the same. They'll adapt, and then all of a sudden you'll see a 10-team competition where it's going to be like the Super Rugby Aotearoa, where you just don't know who's going to win. And I think that's where the Brumbies are going to be the best team in terms of the Australian side, because they've already, that first round, they showed glimpses of being basically a New Zealand team in the way that they played. So I think they can do it. If it's not going to be this week, an Aussie team will do it in the coming weeks.
The Brumbies were good because they were seeking a little bit of redemption or a bit of retaliation for what happened with the Reds in the Super Rugby Australian final. Whereas you look at the Crusaders, and they were, I suppose, coming down from the heights of winning Super Rugby Aotearoa. So I don't know how much you can read into that. The Brumbies were looking for somebody to take their aggression out on after a close loss in the Aussie final. And the Crusaders, maybe they, I don't know, did they celebrate too hard or something like that? Or, one chapter done, let's sort of like just take it back down a notch and then start again. They still managed to win. I'm not so concerned about the Brumbies this weekend, simply because the Chiefs are at home. They've had a couple of weeks there where ill discipline or poor implication of a game plan, poor kicking from Damien McKenzie has cost them. I reckon they'll be back on song at home. I would be worried about it if they had to go to Canberra. But the other thing that we need to consider is that those two matches, so we've got the Crusaders going to Queensland to face the Reds and the Chiefs at home to face the Brumbies. That's basically 1v1, 2v2 in the competitions, Australia and New Zealand. And we back ourselves. We think that we have had the best competition, we had the strongest competition, and so if it's like for like, then those matches take care of themselves. And if we're going to send anybody to Queensland to take on the Reds, then it would have to be the Crusaders, right? Because the Crusaders are the strongest team, not only in New Zealand, not only in Australasia, but right throughout the Southern Hemisphere. So I don't have an issue with that game. I don't have an issue with the Chiefs and the Brumbies. And then when you look across the board, the Blues and the Waratahs, the Waratahs, no one's going to back them for the win. The Blues put 50 on the Rebels the other week. And didn't concede a try. So all of a sudden in a new competition, they're looking refreshed and reinvigorated. Then my only concern with this weekend's round of games is what's going on in Perth. Because I think the Western Force will see this game as their only opportunity to win a game in this competition. Because after that, in rounds 3, 4 and 5, they're in New Zealand to take on the top 3 teams, the Blues, the Chiefs and the Crusaders. They're not going to win. So they need to basically earmark this weekend for victory. Who do they have? They've got the Highlanders, who just beat the Reds. So this is why I'm not concerned about any of the games this weekend. 1v1, Crusaders will get that done. 2v2, Chiefs at home, easy as. Yep. Hurricanes were scoring points like it was.
Yeah, but they leaked tries.
Yeah,
they leaked tries. I think that's a concern.
They scored 64 points.
Yeah, I think that's a concern for the motivation in terms of, I suppose, making sure that you've come away with a win. But I think defensively, and certainly around the edges, that's a concern for the Hurricanes, because I think they have got the force in Napier. So there is that game there is going to be massive for them in the third round. But in terms of the Chiefs, if I go back to the Chiefs and why, look, don't get me wrong, I love the Chiefs and I want the New Zealand teams to succeed and I want them to win. But I slowly see a dip in what they've had. You've got to remember from a mental point of view, they went 0-11 before they started winning, and then they started riding that wave. Now you're starting to see like their key players. Look at Damien McKenzie, how his kicking's been affected now. They're starting to plateau and almost come down. So you can't stay at that level week in, week out when you've played, Super Rugby Aotearoa for that long and how hard it is. When you turn up and it's the same thing again in a competition where, if we're going to be, totally honest, no one cares. Okay, it's just another way to get themselves back in their default selection because of the way it's sort of structured. It's almost.
Can you say no one cares?
Well, no, I shouldn't say that. I shouldn't say that.
Everybody cares about this competition.
What I'm saying is, it's something new. It's not the be and end all of anything. The way they structured, they should have went away. Between New Zealand and South and Australia, and said, well, how do we make sure that we don't have what happened in the first week, where top teams were coming to New Zealand and playing, or and vice versa, and leaving their best players out, in the first round. If you want to hit the ground running, give them a week off the final. Don't give them an excuse to go, well, it's not an excuse. They had to. You come off, celebrating, both sort of finals, and then you're right back in the thick of things amongst COVID. First time it's ever happened. First time the doors are open. They should have thought about this, a lot harder to make sure that the competition was going to be even, because when you come here and the Australian teams are 0-5, who's going to be interested in watching that? I mean, that's why we're sitting here going, well, can they match it? So I hope that they do. But if I come back to my point in terms of the team that I think can actually do it, I think the Brumbies can. I think they've got a solid set piece. They haven't got that. They're motivated because they've lost that final. They've lost against the Reds. They're hungry.
Surely the Chiefs are just as motivated. They lost the final to the Crusaders.
They might be as hungry, but when you've gone that long and won those straight games, it's hard to keep at that level. And when you've got and I'm not saying that the Brumbies are going to come here, being a lot hungrier than the Chiefs. I'm saying there'll be moments in the game where there'll be key guys thinking, okay, well, I don't know if I want to go down on that ball. Because I'm so tired. It just gets repetitive. And what I'm saying is they perhaps need a decent break before they rip into things again. And this is where I think the Brumbies can come here and absolutely win through that mental side of things.
Well, we shall see this weekend. Who knows? Brumbies could get up. You never know.
Well, if no Aussie team gets up, I won't be here next weekend. That's all right.
But if they do,
we'll be swapping seats, mate.
You'll be here. You'll be here.
I won't be here.